IVM.
Welcome to Police Chowki, a special limited series on your favorite public policy podcast, All Things Policy. This series will take you behind the khaki uniform, beyond the flashing red beacon, and into the heart of the functioning of the Indian police force. We cast a critical eye on the role and function of the police in the Indian democracy, from the silent persistence of paperwork and meticulous investigation to risky counterterrorism efforts and policing in conflict zones. We explore the need for police reform and accountability in the system. Each episode brings you a comprehensive exploration of a unique facet of policing, illuminated by the insights of a former IPS officer who has lived the life behind the badge. So join us every Monday morning as we take you into the complex world of Police Chowki.
Hello and welcome to another new episode of Police Chowki. In today's episode, we'll be exploring the evolution, structure, and functioning of the National Disaster Response Force and the National Disaster Management Authority. These two institutions are the pillars of India's disaster response framework. We'll also be talking about some historical events that have shaped India's approach to disaster preparedness over the years, and we'll take you through the process of how India responds to disasters from the initial assessment of a situation to the final execution of a plan. As you may already know, India is a disaster-prone country with likely future climate events. We are not short of natural calamities, so this makes today's episode all the more important. And with me today on the show, I have two special guests. First, I have Mr. Amitabh Thakur. He's an IPS officer currently serving in the state of Odisha. He's posted as the Transport Commissioner and he has extensive experience in disaster management, in responding to disaster situations in the state of Odisha. And we are happy to learn from his experience today. Welcome to Police Chowki, Mr. Thakur.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Sri.
Along with me, I also have Mr. Javeed Ahmad. Mr. Ahmad is also a former IPS officer and served as the DGP of Uttar Pradesh. Welcome back to Police Chowki, Mr. Ahmad. Always happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Sri, and a very warm welcome to my dear colleague, former colleague, Amitabh Thakur. And I'm sure he has some very useful insights from the experience that Odisha Police has had in disaster management over the last 10-15 years. Yeah.
All right. So before actually getting into what the National Disaster Response Force or the NDRF does, I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of disaster preparedness and response in India. Earlier it has been described that India's approach was reactive rather than proactive, in the sense that India was always caught responding to situations which were sometimes out of control, rather than taking proactive steps to address the situation whenever a natural calamity strikes. And India has had its share of unfortunate events over the past, and some of them, like the 1999 cyclone in Odisha and the 2001 Bhuj earthquake in Gujarat, stand out. I want to start by, talking a little bit about this evolution of disaster preparedness in the country and what led to the creation of specialized forces as like the NDRF at the national level and the SDRF at the state level. So open to both of you.
So to start off, let me say that the disaster response framework in India prior to 2005 and after 2005 is totally different. I think 2005 is the watershed, and we'll talk about why it is a watershed during the course of this program. Before 2005, it was more of a reactive thing, as you very rightly said. The disaster focus was that after a disaster, some relief would be provided. The head of this program or this effort of the government was normally the relief commissioner, who operated almost in a silo without any kind of operational coordination with so many other stakeholders that obviously come into disaster management thought process. So to give you an example, in the state of Uttar Pradesh where I worked, there are certain districts which are flood prone on an annual basis. So except for the fact that some companies or some portions of the provincial armed constabulary were trained to to rescue people who were stranded in villages or other places, and equipped with some basic boats and life jackets, and maybe a few gas lanterns. That was all that we had. There was no coordination, for example, with the health department or with transport department or with the electricity department and with so many other organizations that are required for a very scientific and 360-degree approach to disaster management. And it's only not only in terms of natural disasters. There were disasters. For example, the Bhopal tragedy, which we all know of. The response there is something that even today the courts are talking about in their judgments and in their orders. And there have been so many stampedes during Kumbh Melas and such other large congregations, which are all aspects of disaster, whether man-made or natural. But before we go any further on this, I think the experience of Odisha, especially after the super cyclone, would be very useful, because after that Odisha somehow was able to change the way disaster management was organized. And I'm sure Amitabh here is best placed to tell us about how their journey began and where they are right now.
Right. Well, thank you so much, sir. In fact, sir, like being a former police officer, sir, you know that we pass out of the National Police Academy on the 31st of October. Sir. So while we were preparing for our passing out in 1999, many of my colleagues, many of my fellow trainees whose parents were to come from West Bengal, Bihar, and other eastern and northeastern states could not make it to Hyderabad because of the fact that the trains got stuck en route. Odisha was stuck with this cyclone on the 29th of October, and that was probably one of the darkest phase of Odisha. And when we came here during the first week of November, all we saw was devastation and nothing else. More than 10,000 lives were lost. So that was the right time for Odisha to start acting. And in fact, the OSDMA, which is now the Odisha State Disaster Management Authority, earlier it was formed as Odisha State Disaster Mitigation Authority, was formed in the year 1909. We had Odisha Disaster Rapid Action Force that was formed in the year 2001. So both these predates the NDMA and NDRF, which came into being in the year 2005. And since then, Odisha took up a lot of activities for mitigation of disaster. We have today advanced weather prediction systems. We have cyclone shelters almost all along the coastline, and we have got a sizable, it's a very long coastline of about 600 kilometers. Post 99 and 2013 on the 12th of October, when we had Filene. So we were better prepared, we were better informed, and 2-3 days before the cyclone made a landfall, Honorable Chief Minister and the senior functionaries in the government were holding review meetings with us 2-3 times a day. And the stress was on evacuation, because in 99, when there was tidal surge, many lives were lost because of that. And in 2013, we had to relocate about around 5 lakh people. So we shifted them. Now, where do you shift them? So you shift them to cyclone shelters, which were constructed post 99. So every person was housed in a cyclone shelter. He had the security that nothing is going to happen to him. Food was being provided to them, and then the entire official machinery was busy tackling what is going to happen. How do you rescue people? How do you rehabilitate people post cyclone? So between 1999 and 2013, where more than 10,000 lives were lost in 99, in 2013, not even a single life was lost because of the cyclone. I mean, there was floods after that. in which some lives were lost, but not because of the cyclone. And it prompted the Under Secretary General of the UN to fly down to Bhubaneswar to felicitate the Chief Minister. So now, coming to the point that what did Odisha do? So Odisha set up an infrastructure which could take care of all kinds of disasters, be it man-made, be it natural. Odisha prepared an SOP wherein everybody responds almost simultaneously. When in 2013, I was posted at the place where the landfall took place, and believe me, we not for a moment did I feel as if I was away from the state capital where the head of administration is there, because we were there constantly on the phone and post landfall on the satellite phone with the authorities that be. So this gives you a feeling as if everyone is there in tune, in sync with whatever is happening. And we shifted everyone. The SOP made it absolutely clear as to the role of each individual. Now, I being in the police, we had to deal with the revenue administration. As Sir said, that NDRF and NDMA, so all these are central government authorities. They are also deployed. You also have armed forces deployed. You have the CAPFs deployed. So one has to coordinate with all these agencies. Everything has been prepared and everything has been put down on paper, and the SOP is there. Now, I mean, to carry that forward, 2013 there was Filene, 2014 there was Hudhud, then we had Funny, then we had Titli, then we had Amphan, and I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, I was dealing with all these in some way or the other. And in none of these, minus Titli, where some lives were lost because of landslides, in none of these there were any lives lost. So this speaks volumes about what preparedness and also rescue and relief post cyclone can do. To carry that forward and to give an example of the recent train accident at Bahanaga in Balasore. So on the day of the accident, immediate post accident, there were many lives lost. But post accident, only 4 lives were lost. And all this happened because immediately post accident, so many number of ambulances were mobilized, so many of number of medical personnel were mobilized, emergency medical services were set up in different hospitals, in the nearby hospitals, critical cases were transferred to the medical colleges, and all this took place in a matter of 2-3 hours. Senior officers were deployed. So this kind of coordination, this kind of SOP that has been put up by Odisha government resulted in the fact that only 4 lives were lost post accident. In fact, the last person got discharged only in the month of December. When the accident took place on the 2nd of June, and the last person got discharged only in the month of December. So a lot depends on how you prepare, and Odisha, for that matter, like it sees some natural disaster or the other almost every year. I remember having read an article in the Economic Times which said that over the last century, Odisha has seen 91 disasters in 91 years. So you can imagine, but yes, we have responded well. And I mean, as Sir said, we don't react anymore. We respond to the situation, we prepare, and then we respond.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic to hear from, because at least one state in India is doing so well when it comes to disaster response. And what you said also speaks of high state capacity and investment by the government over a period of time, right? All this did not happen overnight. Of course, the government and the stakeholders took the right lessons after the 1999 super cyclone and have put in place a system which has worked so well in the recent decades. So I want to know from you 2 things. One is, can we say that there is a Odisha model of disaster preparedness and response, which can be emulated by other states in the country which are also prone to such calamities? And if so, what are some of the best practices? I think you mentioned about the shelters that have been constructed, and I also believe the early warning systems of Odisha have been praised by many other stakeholders as helping police and other officials do their job on a timely basis? And the second thing is, what is the role of communities here? Do you think, since given the history of Odisha that has faced so many disasters over the years and continues to do so, do you think the people are also far more responsive to such measures? They cooperate, they come together, communities and societies can organize and mobilize much better given your collective experience?
Yep, I would want to respond and break the question into two parts. Odisha did start early because Odisha was stuck with a mammoth disaster in '99, so we did start early. But post 2005, it has been a collective effort. A lot of investment for ODRAF and also for OSDMA has come from Government of India. So we have prepared a very robust infrastructure which can tackle any disaster. A lot of contribution has been given by Government of India to that effect, and a collective strategy by been getting experiences from, say, Assam, which has floods every year, experiences from places which have had earthquakes, experiences from Uttarakhand, which have seen flash floods. We have learned a lot, and we have added to our knowledge base with the help of these inputs from these states. As far as community participation is concerned, yes, that is one of the most vital aspects. Without the participation of the community, nothing can happen. Now, when you talk about relocating people before a cyclone or say before any other kind of disaster that is going to happen, you have to shift them to away from their homes. Nobody wants to go away from their homes. This is a very difficult task. When I'm the transport commissioner now, we have to deal with accidents every day. But if the feeling amongst everyone is that accident is not going to happen with me. I keep giving the example of COVID, wherein the entire community responded because everyone felt vulnerable, everyone felt threatened, everyone felt as if COVID is going to strike him. So they were following every SOP that was given, which doesn't happen in such cases. You don't think that I'm going out on my vehicle and I'm going to meet with an accident. Everyone thinks that he's absolutely safe. This is what happens in during relocation also, because it's very difficult convincing people that the landfall is to happen there. Everyone thinks that it's going to happen elsewhere. So what we do is we take the community into confidence. For each village, we take up some young people, make them responsible for the safety, security, locking up of the houses. And then at every police station from every locality, we call them Sardar, we keep them, and they are responsible as early as possible after the landfall or after when it's safe to travel. We make these people go and verify what has the loss or destruction that has taken place in their villages, and everyone is absolutely sure about their belongings and that nothing is going to happen to them. Even during the Mahanagar train tragedy, it took place, say, about 50 kilometers before Balasore in a very small town, Bahanaga. It's been just an overgrown village. So there was no infrastructure. The accident took place after nightfall. Immediately after that, the entire community responded. People, whoever was around, we also saw ladies coming out of their houses with their saris to carry injured and dead to the nearest school which was there. So without this community participation, nothing can happen. And we do this every 29th October. We hold programs all over the state wherein the community leaders are called. Whoever has done any good work over the past 1 year, we felicitate them. He is awarded at a ceremony, either at the state level or at the district level. So this kind of motivates them also, and everyone is made to feel responsible.
Stay tuned to All Things Policy. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Thanks for sharing that, because it's remarkable, and it really speaks of the resilience of the people and how they can come together to face a disaster in a collective manner. So let's zooming out a little bit from Odisha and looking at the national level now. We of course have the National Disaster Management Authority, and there is also a National Disaster Response Force, both of which operate under the Disaster Management Act of 2005, as Mr. Ahmed pointed out earlier. Mr. Ahmed, could you maybe explain a little bit more about the structure, the governing structure of these two institutions? What are their roles, powers? How do they function? How do they interact with the state governments and other agencies? And what is the sort of like activity which goes on at these institutions?
Yes, sure. But before I do that, I'd very much like that Mr. Thakur would tell us about the administrative structures that have been created in Odisha. Because my understanding is that it is different from the NDRF, which has 16 battalions now. It is the arrangement in Odisha is slightly more flexible, keeping in view the resources and the demands of that particular state. So maybe a few lines from Mr. Thakur about the administrative structure for disaster management in Odisha would be useful before we go to the national scene.
So, the ODRAF, which is the Odisha Disaster Rapid Action Force, after its creation, it was basically made up of police officers, either in the district or the battalions which are there. A vulnerability mapping was done, and then whichever district, I mean, mostly the districts on the coast, they got a component of ODRAF. We today, as on date, we have 23 units of ODRAF spread over the entire state. They have their areas of responsibility. So these forces are created from within the Armed Police Reserve of the district or from the battalion wherever they belong. So they are given specialized training. They have been trained at places like Mundli in Kolkata, and even they've also been sent to different CRPF and ITBP centers. So once they are trained, then they're part of that battalion, part of that district, and they work exclusively under the administration and control of the additional DG law and order of the state. Even though the force belongs to the Odisha Disasters OSDMA, they work under the superintendence and control of the additional DG law and order. As and when there is any possibility of any disaster, so the Special Relief Commissioner, who also heads the OSDMA, makes requisition for force and for this ODRAF, and he sends it to the ADG law and order. Apart from that, in Odisha, the Odisha fire services also have been trained to respond to these kind of situations, and they have done excellent work. They've also been deployed in Meghalaya in the floods of Kerala. So and during different cyclones in Telangana and Andhra also. So it's a very, I mean, I can't say that it's an informal structure, a very formal structure, but they have a lot of flexibility in operation.
Okay. So while Odisha has its own unique, structure to cater to its own demands, the National Disaster Reserve Force, the NDRF, which was created in 2006, is a slightly more formalized structure. Has a slightly more formalized structure. It was set up in 2006, as I said, and now they have 16 battalions spread across various states. I'm sorry, they started out with 8 battalions, but now they have 16 battalions, and they have 28 regional response centers, which are spread out across the country. The important thing here is that the NDRF is made up of all deputationist personnel. What it means is that with the intent of keeping the NDRF as a young force, personnel who are seen as fit and are tested for fitness are taken on a 7-year deputation from various organizations like the BSF, the CRPF, the ITBP, SSB, and others. And here they come, as I said, after an initial test, and they are put through a rigorous training program, including mental training and mental stability. And once they are inducted after the training, then they operate on the various disasters that they are assigned to. That's one. Secondly, rather than operate in a battalion or a company form, which is the normal way that armed forces operate, NDRF has this system of teams. For example, if they have to go for a flood relief, or they have to go for a situation where there's been an earthquake and structures have come down. So there are different teams which are formed for the specific purpose that they have to attend to. And that team, depending on the requirement, has different components of people who are, maybe good at diving, or good at cutting through concrete and reaching out under the rubble to trace people, to rescue people. They are also assisted by canine squads, which are very, very helpful, especially in rescue operations. So NDRF, as I said, has a very formalized structure, which is slightly different from the structure that most state police forces have. Most state police forces have the kind of structure that Odisha has, and Mr. Thakur was mentioning about that people have been trained, and as and when required, they are requisitioned and they do that kind of rescue work or disaster management work, and then they go back and keep doing their regular duties. Obviously, they are trained for this kind of work. That's the difference between how the NDRF operates and how the rest of these SDRFs operate. Obviously the SDRFs are the state disaster reserve forces, response forces that have been created by statute in the various states. The statute, as we talked about earlier, is the National Disaster Management Act of 2005.
In this structure, I also sort of want to know, in case of a crisis situation, let's say it's a developing crisis. So what are sort of like the triggers which determine the deployment of forces, or how do you assess the damage? Of course, it's an evolving situation, so the call has to be taken from time to time. But as Mr. Thakur mentioned, in Odisha at least, even the chief minister is involved, right? So how does the decision making in these authorities function typically, and who are some of the important individual stakeholders in this setup?
So if I may, sir, when the coordination amongst all the stakeholders and all the forces which are there on the ground is of paramount importance. So unlike in the US, where if you have personnel from different forces coming there, whoever is the senior most, he takes the leadership. It doesn't happen that way in India. So all the powers and all the authority is vested with the district magistrate of the district. And as far as the state is concerned, in Odisha, it's this special relief commissioner. So what we do is we prepare a proper plan. We take stock of the situation. We also find out how many teams are we getting. The requisition of the teams, say in case of an impending cyclone, is obviously done on the basis of IMD predictions. So once we have that, then we sit with the officers of all the forces. Then we chalk out a strategy. So I'll give you an example. So in the 2013 post the cyclone, there was floods all over. And we were in a place called Hingley, where we got information that some 6 people are stuck on top of a brick kiln. And the river was swollen, it was in full speed, and there was no way anyone could have gone there. So when we sat down with the ODRAF, with the fire services, with the NDRF, I still remember the name of the inspector of NDRF, Sunil Kumar. He said that, sir, isme mujhe jaane do. I said, why? So he said that but you just give me a local guide, because the river is flowing at about say 30 kilometers per hour. So we have to go upstream. So we have to go against the flow of the river. So we have to use the boat at about 40 kilometers per hour. And we had submerged electric poles and everything. And these people were on top of a big kiln surrounded by a couple of babool trees. So he said that only our boats can reach there. So this is when we sit down to formulate a strategy. They said they volunteered that I will go and rescue them. So two boats of NDRF went, they rescued all six of them, and no life was lost. So when we sit down, it is very important that we do inventory management. We take stock of the strengths and weaknesses of all the teams involved. NDRF being a very specialized force will definitely be much better equipped and much better trained as far as the state SDRFs are concerned. So this is what we do, and it has paid rich dividends.
And also to talk a little bit about the role of the local police, right? And of course, they're often the unsung heroes in many such situations, I believe, because they may also, in certain situations, be the first responders along with firemen and so on. And at the same time, some of these natural calamities may give rise to law and order situations as well, in the weeks thereafter, right? In your experience, from both of you, what sort of role has the local police officers and the constables and so on have played in responding to such events? And is there more to be done in the sense of, recognizing the role that police faces and making enough the resources and technology available at their hands as well?
In times like these, police is the first responder, and police is one force which everyone looks up to. So, and I mean, but they being there 24 into 7, I mean, so are the revenue people, but they're more concerned about relief and providing resources to all concerned. So, what is normally done? I mean, as per our SOP, police stations are equipped beforehand to handle any kind of situation. Uh, we deploy nolias. Nolias are the local fishermen here. Gas cutters, kerosene, diesel, dry ration, and we also send forces from the district reserve to every police station. So every police station also acts as a unit. Apart from deployment of NDRF and ODRAF at different places, every police station is to act like a unit. They should be well equipped to respond to any kind of a situation. What we also do is we take an order from the DM beforehand. We make him sign some papers, and the same is given whenever NDRF or any specialized force is to be deployed. So police has a very important role to play. Secondly, immediately post disaster, you have to distribute relief, and it's of paramount importance that relief reaches the places where it is needed the most. And in 99, there were instances where relief was looted en route. So what is done by Odisha is that heavy deployment is done while the relief movement takes place, and anybody, come what anybody, like I mean, in the case of Ganjam in 2013, one senior leader of the ruling party was booked under NSA the moment he sat on Rasta Roko saying that relief should reach a particular village first. So, as you rightly said, that police has a very important role to play. Then you also, for maintenance of law and order, there has to be some show of strength, and there has to be some demonstrative action which kind of preempts anybody else from taking law into their own hands.
Yeah, just to add to what Mitab said, you have to realize that the police is one organization of the state, one arm of the state that is present all across the length and breadth of any district or any state, and they have a few things which are inherently useful in a disaster situation. Number one, they have numbers. There are many people who are trained and disciplined, and they can respond to a command. So that's one. Secondly, they have communication equipment. Thirdly, they have a network. And fourthly, they have authority at the local level. And finally, they have a very good understanding of the local area. And they have networks. They know people who can be mobilized in such a situation. So when you put all these inherent capacities and capabilities of the local police, and the fact that they are the people who are reaching a particular site first, they are the first responders. It is expected that the police, in a disciplined manner, maybe not as organized as one would like it to be, but in a disciplined manner under a command, they are able to ensure that the first efforts of rescue and relief are initiated. Whether it is a train accident or an earthquake and buildings collapsing, it is the police's job to ensure that rescue happens. It is the local police which ensures that property is not looted or people are not allowed to die because the ambulances have not been allowed to reach the spot. So traffic has to be cleared. So various aspects of it come into play, and I would like to recall a rail train accident that happened in Kanpur area in 2016 when I was still serving. This happened just outside Kanpur, about 20, 25, 30 kilometers outside Kanpur, at about 3 in the morning. And that is the time when everyone is, not available. So we got this information. The local police was the first to respond. We in UP we have this emergency response vehicles which are patrolling the state 24/7. So within 40 minutes, about 200 police vehicles had reached the accident site, which was about 10 kilometers or 7 kilometers away from the main road. So about 200 emergency vehicles were able to take out people from the trains and see to it that they reached the hospitals. We had enough time to mobilize the hospitals, which were also slightly far away, as was the case in the Odisha train tragedy last year. So when the local police goes, it uses all these facets of its authority to not only mobilize itself but also to mobilize the local influential people who can add to the effort of the police and be the first responder in many ways. And you very rightly said that they are often the unsung heroes of such rescue operations.
Right. Yeah. And thanks for painting that holistic picture. Before we close, I have a final question. We have spoken of the strengths of India's and particularly Odisha's disaster preparedness and response. But I'm sure there'll also be scope for reforms at the policy level, at implementational or tactical level, and more. Right. So I want to know from you, what are these areas of improvement which exist as far as India's disaster response is concerned, and what sort of changes will need to be done both at the legislative and at a tactical level so that we can further bolster our response strength?
I think the first requirement, purely at the tactical level, is that the acquisition of equipment has to be smoother. I mean, as a retired person, I can say, maybe others who are still serving may not want to say it, but getting financial approval for things which are essential can be very frustrating at times, and more frustrating when you need money for the upkeep of the equipment. Getting money for buying an equipment is easier. Getting money for the maintenance and upkeep of equipment is, I think, 5 times more difficult than getting money for the capital expenditure. So that is one area definitely where better systems need to be created. And on the legislative side, I think after the NDMA Act, things have become quite smooth, in the sense that the legal authority flows from the NDMA Act, and especially with the formation of the SDRFs and the state disaster management authorities in all states. Those legal and administrative structures are in place. But what happens is that in the rough and ready of daily administration, the requirement for keeping these forces or these elements in battle ready condition often loses focus, because you feel that they are not required right now, we can deal with it later. But as happens with all disasters, they don't come with a notice. They suddenly come, and you find that your equipment or your men are not up to the mark, because for some reason they were not given the kind of sharp edging that is required.
Right. So, I mean, from your comments, my takeaway at least is that at the policy level, we are sort of sorted, but there is a lot more that needs to be done in terms of resource availability, financing, and strengthening the state capacity, as with many things, police, and as with many other things in the country. But before we close, any final thoughts from you, Mr. Thakur?
No, as Sir said, that when disasters never come with a prior warning. So one has to be battle ready, both with men and equipment at the same time. And Sir very rightly put it that only supply of equipments would not suffice. Their upkeep and proper maintenance is of paramount importance, which somehow I also feel is slightly lacking. And then then only we can say that we can, like, nobody can stop disasters, but we can prepare ourselves in such a manner that no lives are lost.
And going forward, I also believe that this should become a national priority, because given climate change and so on, and which is happening all around us, the likelihood of natural disasters is also on the upswing. So anyway, thank you so much for taking your time out, Mr. Thakur, and joining us for this chat today. And thanks to you, Mr. Ahmed, for being a regular on Police Chowki and making this happen. Thanks once again.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Shri.
Thank you, Anurag. Thank you. Amitabh, sorry.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.